Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Were there any corrections to the minutes? No? All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make it.
Second? Those in favor, petition? Aye. Item number 2 for the review of the committee of 2 has been approved, so that is off our list. I'll make a motion to adjourn the application for the findings of fact on 219 SAG Homeowner LLC. Is there a motion for that?
We need to speak up.
Is there a motion to adjourn 219?
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye. Very good. Look to old business and construction. Fine.
You just spoke it.
Okay.
No.
You're on, Brian.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Good afternoon. So Brian Glasser, architect representing Warwick residents, 106 Acres Lane. The builder, Sean, Michael, here for any questions for him. Going back to last month's comments, board members requested to have samples of the windows and siding colors, which I brought a sample for everyone else to look at. So this is the window, and this is going to be the siding color, and the paint for the trim is going to be a similar, probably an eggshell finish to match, similar to the actual siding, which that's a pre-finished Maybach color. So we're going to go with this Mark sand. And for the window trim, it's going to be a gunmetal by Mark. Some of the other comments that the board members had was the breakfast room on the rear elevation, which on the south side, we ended up reducing the door widths by 6 inches on all 8 doors, which reduced the glazing on those on all 3 elevations for a total of 12.5% less, reducing our total rear. The rear is probably the one I was more concerned versus the side, but the rear is down to 18.6% total on the back of the house. Those were pretty much the board's concerns.
It seems that most of the windows are also concentrated on the first floor, which makes it less of an issue in general for.
That's correct. Yeah, the heights of those doors are also 8 feet. Previous projects, we were at 10 and presenting 12 feet tall. So
Yeah.
These are all this isn't my first time here, so I figured these are things that we have to keep.
No, these are scales.
Yeah, moving forward with new clients is something that I mentioned to them before we get started. So they was you're in the village, You know, whatever they want, so try to guide them on that one in the beginning.
I think you addressed the points that were made beforehand. And is that a stucco chimney?
So, yes. Natural wood and natural.
Yes.
Brian, did you bring a glass sample or did you get that glass?
No,
was in the list.
we would go, what was that?
That was in the list from last month's meeting.
No.
Okay.
Sorry. We would probably go to low E2, which is usually typically presented in the past. If that's something you want to have the file.
Maybe a complete set. Just so you. No, I know in a traditional glass would be zero being just translucent, and this would be from the tin. So I consider that a courtesy and self-preservation for us. And we've got overhang.
Even concerned about light exclusion.
You might not expect overhang, absolutely.
I think it's good design.
Yeah.
I don't see any concern with the style of glass, being that it seems a decent distance from neighbors, the public street, the design overall seems well thought out. I don't think that even with conventional clear glass, there'd be concern for.
There is for night glow. Yeah. This particular setting has certain vegetation in place, but overall, some of these numbers are still high in general for what we do. Were there any other comments from the board? And the color is all right, acceptable. Are you prepared to make a motion to approve?
I'll make it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? All right.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Can I get samples back or do you guys?
You have the sample.
We want all those
Did you
glasses
bring
on.
in that glass samples?
Yes, not a
On
Yeah.
file? Okay.
Thank you.
That needs to come back.
With your space. Oh, it's on the side. Or is it divided? I try to create the.
One not before,
I mean, it's me, but if I ever clean it to clear stuff off, it's like a spike off and goes up and gets.
They're only,
Yeah.
I'm just putting them out, she's not in the party. Yeah.
I only have one left.
This isn't what we're looking at.
I'm gonna shoot past the. I'm that one, right?
I'm still very active.
You're voting then.
Could we have a list?
Could you update us on what your submissions are?
No.
Good afternoon, Melissa Devovich.
Just a second. All set? Please.
Good afternoon, Melissa Devovich, Chronic Environmental Associates. I'm here on behalf of 194 Ahrb Lane LLC. I'm joined by Stephen Wayne, the architect of record, and John Bennett, Esquire. We submitted to the board revised plans, including an updated landscape plan that addresses the board's questions and comments from the last meeting. Mr. Wang also provided a letter that specifically addressed item by item, the different changes made per the board's comments. And I have them here to address and go through them if the board would so like it.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Stephen Wang, the architect for Ahrb Lane. I see my letter's been handed out, so we'll give 1 minute to approve.
That would be
And I'll
helpful.
be happy to present.
Very good. Thank you. Would you continue?
Okay, maybe if we could go to the images. That one, I think that's part of the images. Can you submit it? Yeah. There we go, that's good. So, okay, the way I arranged this was to take our last middle image on top and the altered image below. So you can easily track what I presented and what I altered in response to your comments. And firstly, to address the one which I addressed here, the owner bought this house and quite liked it. That's why he bought it, and it's white trim, everything's white. We're doing a modest addition to it. And so he would just soon keep it contextual with the neighborhood and in keeping. And we're not changing all the windows. The windows here are not an ultimate windows. The clad window comes that way, it's white. And for example, the Ahrb window on the front, when we get to that, we're just changing sashes. So we're not, this is, as I said, we're not pulling this house apart. But I think it was a valid point that was raised about the effect of the white, and secondly, and especially related to the turret, and secondly, the amount of glazing. So in this image, if you look at the top, what we presented and what's below, we have, in consultation with the client, decided to retain the top section of that turret with no change to what it is today. That keeps the windows smaller, keeps the shingle around the top, it turns it down. I think it was a valid point made to us by the board, and that's how we chose to address that. Also, the next level down, the windows, instead of going to the floor, we raised them to match the existing sill height as it is today. And this is the view from Ahrb. If we could please go to the next image. That's right, face from the corner. Also step it back so you're actually on the street, so you see what the house looks like there. But again, in the top, you see we had a lot of white, we had a lot of glass. We're just keeping the existing top exactly as it is, no change. And right below that, presently there's a double sliding door. We want a single door sidewise and mounts to the same percentage increase, I think something like 4% with the side lights. And that's how we address it. If we could then go to the next view, please. It's sheet number 3. This is looking direct, straight on from Daniels. Same thing. Look at the turret. We just turned it all down. Less glass, more shingle. Well, shingle before was that paneling of glass, keeping the existing. And that has the bow window, that dining room right in front and center. That's how it is today. The only thing we're doing is changing the bottom sashes, have no buttons, which actually is how the house was originally built.
We just have the house.
That's the last submission, and this is all the changes. to keep it existing.
Thank you. We appreciate the effort not to make another lighthouse inside. Oh. Any comments?
Can you let us know what the trim color is existing?
Well, I color matched it to a Benjamin Moore. I don't make these names up, but it's called Baby's Breath.
It's a tint of white.
Yeah, I see.
did you have a sample of that or no?
We just mentioned it was.
Yeah.
It's not a high gloss. Can you describe it? It's not-
No. Dull sheen.
Historic precedent, inferences.
It's a pretty expensive one. It's
It's
high off white.
not shiny.
No,
No,
it's
not
not.
shiny, no.
Not high gloss.
No, no gloss, no high gloss. I wouldn't want that. I agree.
Maybe we could see it though.
Okay.
Any comments, Tom?
And I think the second version is an improvement in sort of having a less unified glass tower.
I agree.
The applicant reduced the glass as we asked, and I feel that any version of a low gloss, matte white, or whitewash is keeping with an historic.
You'd be surprised.
We have tried to get samples when we can so that something is on file and it's actually succinct.
Can you close it subject to submission of the check?
Yes, I will get to that. Thank you. Is there a motion to take it to committee on of two for the color?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, that was part of the motion. Thank you.
Make you confusing, right? On this one?
Oh, yes, that's true. Very bad.
We just got 8 and 6.
Don't have any of those six. That's not the second page. Second page, 101. And a 3, 4, 7.
Did you get it? Or no?
It's not here now.
Oh, okay.
5 and 6 aren't here.
Russell, what page are you referring to?
I was gonna start there on A006. It's the northwest corner of the house.
Yes, okay.
So
You have it? 006?
we
I
don't
don't
have
have
it.
it. I think I have it.
003?
No, 006.
It's,
Oh, it's in the right.
Yeah, it's a color record of the house.
Do you have all of them?
Yeah, it's in the package dated May 16.
No?
Okay, we have it. So
You have it.
You may proceed.
My name is Russell Riccardi. I'm the architect for 377 Parsonage. I did informally present last meeting, but there wasn't a quorum to vote, so I'm preparing again. The house is a flag lot of Parsonage. It's 4 houses in, so it's not visible from the street. If you're looking at A006, just as an introduction to the house, you enter the property on the extreme northwest corner of the property. So the first view you have is the north and west elevation. The west elevation, there are no changes proposed. And the first part of the north elevation, the only thing we're proposing, and you can see it even better on A008, the front door currently is glass. We're actually replacing the solid door to announce the entry. The porch exists. We're proposing to include screens. And then the doors behind the screens, which is from the living room, they exist now as French doors, and we're proposing to change them to pockets sliding, lift and slide doors from artistic. There's no changes to the roof, the second floor windows throughout. And then the bank of 4 windows, which is the dining room, no change. If you then go to A005, sorry, I'm going backwards, but we will allow the house. A005, we are proposing to enclose 2 small portions of an existing porch. The porch is existing, so there's no change to coverage. The total enclosed addition is 84 square feet, but there was a pool house which has already been removed that totaled 365 square feet. So net on the property, we're reducing the enclosed space by 280 square feet. On this elevation, again, nothing on the second floor. The 4 windows that you see, there are 2 existing. We're actually replicating them, so there's a pattern of 4.
This is on the first floor.
This is on the first floor, correct?
Okay.
You got it? Yep. Thank you. And then the last elevation, which is the back towards the rear yard, which is A011. The gable end to the left of the elevation is not changing at all. The 5 windows that you see, which is at the kitchen currently, we're actually adding a 5th window in the middle, so that it's originally 4 windows that are off center on the elevation. We're adding a 5th window at the kitchen to make it 5 equal windows.
This is on the left or the right?
On
Sorry.
the right, there's the 1-story piece. You can also see there's a patio that the house, the U shapes around. It's an existing patio, although we're redoing it to the material, but there are, again, the lift and slide glass doors from the living room. There are actually slightly less windows than what's currently existing. And then on either side of the patio, we're also adding 3 lift and slide windows, so that the 2 sides of the patio are symmetrical.
That's in this area.
Exactly. You can see that on. There isn't a rendering of it, but it is on showing elevations. On A200, elevations 2 and 3 have those 2. Since the window work is actually fairly minimal, so we're not intending to change the cedar siding. The roof exists as a metal standing seam roof. That's not changing anywhere. We are adding a barbecue. The garage stays as is.
And so out on the right side, south elevation, you're adding an outdoor shower and.
We're adding an outdoor shower on there was one at the pool house. It's probably gone. So we're adding an outdoor shower. It's going to be cedar sided to match the house. And it's on an existing, the porch exists, so we're building on top of the existing porch.
Just a thought, but the continuity of the siding of the house to the shower, would it make more sense to have the vertical as opposed to horizontal?
Oh, I don't object to that at all. Vertical would be fine.
Just appearance wise,
All
I
they
think it's a
want
little
is
different.
privacy, so.
Right,
They
yeah.
want privacy. That was their only request, so.
That just strikes me, but I'm open to other ideas. What do you think? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
For the enclosure,
For this outdoor shower, using vertical as opposed to horizontal.
but yeah, I think that's some practical benefits too, as far as runoff and everything.
Yeah. As long as it
Totally
doesn't sit in the
acceptable, not
seams.
an issue at all.
Thank you. Any questions?
In the, in the northwest, in the entrance, the windows to the left of it, we switched from French to pockets. Were the existing French doors mullions, and is it the same sort of fenestration type, or are they?
No, the existing, they're mullioned, but they're not mullioned like the windows. They're just strangely horizontal mullions. So the client requested that we just make it clean, clear glass.
Yeah, how wide were they before?
They were, I think they were French doors that were 6 feet wide.
So it's very horizontal,
Very
That's
horizontal.
odd.
Yes, it's very,
jarring almost, yeah.
and it doesn't, the rest of the house is sort of a slightly more modern farmhouse feel to it, and those windows have nothing to do with the rest of that.
Yes. I think it's refreshing that someone purchased a house they actually like, you know? It's-
Well, yes, and they're actually putting a lot of money into staying there and keeping it,
Yeah.
upgrading it. It had some serious structural issues. But we correct.
Anything else that you want to cover?
I think that covers all the major things we're doing.
Okay. Any comments?
And then you all are on the screened in porch. or-
No, we were gonna, because right now it's just an existing porch, so we will put a horizontal railing height,
Yeah,
just so the screens don't break.
Exactly, yeah,
But
that's
the
what I'm
idea is
concerned.
to literally see right through,
oh, great.
because the front yard is totally private and see no one.
Oh, nice. I think this is good stewardship of a nice house, so I appreciate it.
That was the intention.
Do you want to go ahead and make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to vote.
Okay. Kevin?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. My apologies. It's back, it's on the file. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hello, great. Hello. I'm Jörg Töne. I'm an architect at Billy Cotton Studio. We're the designers of this project at 610 Main Street. 610 Zag Main Street, I'm sorry. And my colleague Natalie Wong from Ilya Korolev Architects is here in the room with you. I apologize, I cannot be there in person, but I hope we'll be able to review this together remotely. We are here to represent LST Property Holdings, LLC, our clients again at 610 Zag Main Street, and we submitted a revised design addressing comments of the board from our last meeting. Mainly, we did remove the driveway gate fence and trash area gate fence gate, I'm sorry, and the trash area fence from this submission, and we will submit this as a separate application. Furthermore, we are addressing the comments on some of the windows in the proposed design, and we will show those in these coming slides. Here you can see again the existing facade, the east facade of the building. And if we go to the next slide, please, you can see our previously submitted design and the questionable or the areas that were questioned by the board at the last meeting. And to address the concern about the large units on the stair tower on the left of the entry, we adjusted the design, and we did also do one modification on the right side by the side entrance. So here you can see our revised design, where we basically changed the window sizes and matched them to the windows on the right side of the entrance. So this is now mirroring across the two sides. This represents a 33% reduction in the glass area of that stair tower. So we hope that that addresses the concerns of the board. Overall, maybe to just for the board members that were not present at the last meeting, the proposed design proposes to change the facade and also roof material. Maybe if you can stay on that slide, previous slide, please. To all shingles. So we have some components currently with shingles, some with plaster. We have metal roofing. So our intent is to simplify all that and replace all facade materials with the shingles. In this, just as a reminder, this is a rendering showing a weathered shingle. We are installing natural yellow cedar shingles that then will weather over time. This also includes the surrounds of the chimneys. In terms of the proposed windows, we would like to install windows without trims to make them less pronounced on the facade. Also, no muntins or grills to simplify them. The windows will be painted in a light gray color, and I believe there is a sample of that on your desk as Natalie brought those along. And we have two sort of modern interventions or additions to the design, which is one here, a very thin metal roof painted in the same gray color over the entrance. And we are proposing a similarly painted metal pergola on the backside of the house, and we'll get to that later. Overall, we'd like to accomplish a softening of the overall view or exterior of the house to be more aligned with local vernacular and to harmonize the house with its surroundings. A simpler, a more subdued appearance is what we're striving for. And I mentioned the two contemporary elements and the fact that we are removing or installing these windows without trims. If we can go to the next slide, please.
So this is the elevation drawings depicting the window design that we proposed last time. The two highlighted units were the ones that the board raised concern. So we revised the design of those two units. We can go to the next slide. So instead of two 17-foot tall units, they are now 4 smaller units that basically mirrored the size of the small units over at the bedroom wing on the right-hand side of the elevation. So the windows we reduced in both width and height from 4 foot wide to 3 foot 4 wide, and also there's a horizontal band introduced in the middle that broke down the scale of the window into much more in scale with the rest of the building. Also shown on this elevation, if you look at the very lower right-hand corner, that's the entry into a bedroom suite. If you could go back to the previous slide. That was the glass door there before, and then go back to the next slide. With this latest design, we eliminated the glass door, and it's now a solid enclosure with a cutout, and then behind that is a solid door. So portion of the facade, we have reduced the proposed glass area as well and make that large entry more enclosed. So if you can go to the next slide. So this is a overall glass area comparison sheet. The portion with the red rectangle is the east facade showing previous design, again showing 2 tall units of the stair tower. If you could go to the next slide again. So you can see the glass area comparison here. Proposed glass has been dropped from 125 square feet down to 83 square feet. So and it's been reduced by a total of 42 square feet in that glass area. And on the left-hand side of this page, it's showing the north elevation of the building. So on this elevation, the only change that we're proposing is the sliding door unit on the ground floor next to that porch. The glass height has been increased. This is to match the glass height increase on the terrace elevation, which we will go over in the next slide. So overall, in these two facades, we are not proposing any change to any glass sizes for the second floor, except for 2 units introduced at the stair tower.
If we can go to the next slide. You can see again, this is the rendering of the house when it was first proposed by the builder of the house. And so we matched our renderings to these views to show you how we propose to show all the proposed changes. You can go to the next slide. Again, this is the previously suggested design with the tall stair tower windows, and the next slide will show then the reduction and basically the mirroring of the units from the right side of the entrance to the left side. Overall, I wanted to also add that the width of the windows are staying the same on the ground floor, and so we will have a very rhythmic and coordinated elevation view here. If the next slide are dark or the night views of the same view, and if we go to the next slide again, here you can see the change to the tower and also what Natalie had described with the door on the side entrance being changed to a solid door there. Next slide is a street view of the same conditions existing. Next slide, the previously proposed, and next slide, the now updated design. Again, to show how the design changes. The next 2 slides are the same view as nighttime views. Previous proposed, now newly proposed. This also shows how the overall size and light from those windows is reduced. And we would now want to jump to the west facade. If we go to the next slide, please. This is the existing condition, and we're proposing the same updates to the facade, changing all facade and roofing materials to the shingles. One comment we are addressing on this facade, if we go to the next slide, is that we are removing from our scope the large living room windows from the scope. and we are proposing to just refinish them as the existing units so that the exterior finish of these doors matches the finish of the new windows. If you go to the next slide, Natalie can talk about the overall glazing areas of that facade.
So on the right half of this drawing is the west elevation, the elevation facing the full terrace. So as York described, the large sliding door unit you see in the center, we're going to keep the existing unit as is, and we're only going to change the frame in the same gray color, so the color will match all the other new windows. And the other change we're proposing here is the ground floor sliders. You're seeing on this elevation, we're proposing to increase from 8 foot in height to 9 foot 8.5 in height to improve the view out of this facade. On the left-hand side of the drawing, the only change we're proposing again is pertaining to the sliding door. So this is just so that all the sliding doors in the breakfast room area match the same height. And then as for second floor, the only change we're proposing is one fixed picture window on the second floor at the balcony. It's on the west facade, the pool facade, at the balcony on the right hand side. That's the only window change we're proposing. The rest of the second floor window.
It may be pointed out because it's.
Yeah.
Often.
So this window is the only change we're proposing from 2 pieces of window 4 to and then the rest of the second floor window will stay the same.
And what is the increase that you're proposing on the west? Increase in
So-
glazing?
Yeah. Overall, on the west facade, the increased area is 140 square feet, 5.6% of the area of this facade. And then on the south facade, which is the left-hand side line, the overall increase is 23 square feet, 3% facade area.
The west side was how much increase?
It is
124?
a 140 square feet.
140 increase. Is that correct? And these specifications that you're presenting today are increased from last.
No,
Last
so
submission, or no?
this increase was presented in the last meeting.
Okay.
In the previous.
Just to clarify. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And maybe if we could go to the next slide. We have similar renderings to convey the proposed design. One thing to note here on the left side by the pool house, which will receive the same matching facade and roof treatment as the main house. We have currently a pergola that we propose to remove. And if we go to the next slide, you will see that the new location of the pergola is on the right side of the balcony and porch off of the family room there. And we have more images of that in next slide. If we go to the next slide here, you will see that the change on this facade only pertains to the grills in the large, or that we're basically keeping the grills or the doors, including the grills in the living room facade there. If we go to the next slide, you will see this view also rendered as a nighttime render. Since there is no change in any of the sizes, we just have this one rendering. One thing we did want to point out to the board is, if we go to the next slide, the fact that currently we are already working on the interior of the house, and we have installed several basically drapers on most of the windows, the floor to ceiling tall windows, or and we wanted to show this to the board, as this is again decreasing the visual width of these windows, particularly at night. So even though the height we propose a height increase, the visual width is less. Also, then these draperies will most likely be in use, maybe closed at times. In terms of the light output, that will reduce the amount of light emitting from the building. Another thing we did want to point out is that within these interior renovations, we also installed a better lighting control system. So the interior lighting will be much more nuanced and adjustable. So we think that the output will be less than what may have been perceived up to now. If we go to the next slide, and also just to go back, the renderings do not include or take into account these.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just explain, are you describing in the last comment that the height of the units are taller in the proposed, but you're saying they're narrower?
They're not narrow. We're keeping the width, and what we have proposed on the ground floor units is an increase. And maybe we can go back to the elevation drawings. It's indicated in those. We are not proposing any increases on the second floor, as Natalie had pointed out earlier.
But the premise that you're adding drapery and controlled lighting is all up to the resident to utilize this to decrease the light emission. There's no guarantee
Well, I mean,
that the owner of the house is going to actually use the drapes or use the controlled lighting. Is that correct?
that is correct. But just to make the point that we, the drapery in the open arrangement are decreasing the width. As you can see in the photographs, this is the open condition. So even already in the open condition, the visible width of the windows is decreased
And just
at various amounts in different conditions.
Just to finalize, the existing height is what, and how much taller are you adding?
The existing height is 8 feet. 8 feet.
Yeah.
Proposed height is 9 foot 8.
And what's the square footage of the existing units that you're talking? Just thinking, what is the width times height? So it's 8 foot by.
Existing width is also 8 feet, so roughly the square feet is 64. For existing. For if you're talking about 1 unit.
So it's a significant increase is what we're looking at. You're saying the drapes will cut back, but again, the drapes are up to the owner and what you're proposing, somebody else could buy the house and take all the grades out. So there's not really any guarantee that what you're doing is actually lowering the emission. Is, I guess, the perspective that I'm analyzing from. Okay.
Right, yeah.
One question, the window above the new proposed pergola, are those full length? Seems to be a sitting area for a master.
The second floor windows remain in height, so we're not changing the dimension, the height or the width of any of those, except for the one unit that Natalie pointed out. Basically between the balcony and the gable, just to the left of it, there is a unit that we propose where there are currently two individual windows, and we propose to combine those to one large.
Okay.
It's the same sheet. Could you, do you mind pointing out those units? I find this confusing, the layout. You have the existing and then you have the proposed from last submission.
Yeah,
And I'm not
so
seeing it compared to the current submission.
we are, so if we're looking at page 24, so this is showing west elevation, the elevation facing the pool, and the south elevation. So at the very top of this page, those two drawings are existing.
We don't have those page
I
numbers.
think ARB 24.
/A.
Okay.
So it's the west elevation.
Yeah, so right half of this page is the west elevation. AHRB 24. So the top drawing, you're looking at existing condition. And then the gray-out figure is the class calculation of the existing condition.
So those two minis turning into a.
And then the elevation below that, that's our proposed elevation. And our current proposal compared to the proposal at the last board meeting, it has not changed on this elevation. Our only change being proposed here is we're not touching the sliding door unit you see at the center. So we'll keep everything there. But the rest of the glazing design was the same as presented at last meeting. And then lastly, at the lower right-hand corner, that shaded diagram shows the glass elevation of our current.
And this is new.
I mean, one way to consider reducing the light emission would be the railing material of the balcony. I'm not sure if we're even at that point of looking for solutions.
You're speaking about on the second?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are existing cable, is that correct? Or no? Yes. Okay.
No, so the current railing is, I believe it's wood, and we're proposing. Cable. Oh, it's cable, yeah, that's correct.
It is cable. and
Existing is cable too. Yeah.
Stay with table, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think last month, the overall impact was these large expanses of tall glass. And I'm not sure that some of us picked up on the other increase, to be perfectly frank.
One thing I do want to reiterate all that we already brought up at the last meeting is that we are proposing to use low E glazing, which will cut down the emission by the visual emission by 30%. I believe also there should be a sample of that glazing as part of the sample collection for you to review.
It's hard to generate that concept from that, but
Does the existing fenestration have an E rating?
I don't have exact specification of the current. But I
It
do
would be
know,
interesting to help the overall reduction or gain of lighting could.
but
What
you
is it
know
stated
this
that-
particular glass have a light transmittance of 70%, so it's like cut down.
And Pat, I'm wondering, were there some photos provided by a neighbor that we could take a look at?
No,
Mm,
did you think there was?
No, there was an email sent by Marilyn.
I couldn't,
Marilyn Foster?
Foster.
that one was gonna make, that was through Logan C.
Yes, yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So these are real night illumination images, obviously not.
No, that's the house next door, that's 6, so if they keep going. That's it, right there, it's 6.
Do we have a date on these photos? I'm sorry, my name's Heather Cook, I'm owner's representative, only because I want to point out for what it's worth, and obviously we respect. Ownership purchased the house 2 years ago, back home, there was a fire, it's been construction and electrical issues, so there's been nobody in it other than two.
This was a month ago.
And this is, they're still not living there.
This was a month ago.
I know, I'm saying, sorry, John, I hear you. We have been irresponsible in our construction process.
These are new construction.
This is,
windows.
that's what I'm saying, is there's no window treatments and exposed bulbs, and that's our responsibility and our fault.
But you see why this is an important case.
100%.
This house
It's on a farm field.
was approved and
Yeah.
went through a lot of meetings, and unfortunately, as you can see, there's too much light emitting from the house. And frankly, when you look at this page of Ahrb 29, these are very large units. And to make them larger, to have two 64 square foot large units next to another 64 square foot unit, and then adding additional square feet, it just seems out of scale. It just seems like we're adding to the issue. And you're leaving one of the largest units. And I guess my question for John is, at what point is the 50% rule take place where we have the ability to relook at the program if all the windows are being replaced?
I'm not familiar with the 50% rule except for FEMA when it comes to substantial addition renovation. In the building code, when you approach 50% of a system or stuff like that, you have to upgrade to modern code. But I don't know of anything in our zoning code that triggers that.
It's just a lot of glass, and you can see what's happening here. It's troubling. That
And that picture is from June 14.
there's been complaints about this house, and now you're asking for additional glass, and it's an issue for us. I also wonder why you need more glass. It just seems like it's a lot already.
I think from ownership's perspective, it was more about the aesthetic and like not having the incumbent, incumbent of some of the lines and stuff. So I think bringing down the size of overall is something obviously we're open to, leaving it as existing, but simplifying by taking out.
So for example, on the west elevation, these units that you're making taller, why not make them thinner then? Why must it be, since it's all new construction in those areas, why not submit that you'd like to have a taller glass but a thinner one? That seems to be an argument, but to just simply make a large unit larger is difficult for us to swallow at this point.
Sounds like it's an issue for the community as well as this review process. If that's something that's going to come up. You can understand our responsibility is to the community as well as to what.
When you look at page Ahrb 29, and you're showing us the existing conditions from inside the house, these are very large units that are taking almost the entire wall of these rooms in almost every case. And it just seems like the ask is additional to an already existing problem with the house.
If I may comment on those photographs, if you look at the view 1, 2, and 3, sorry, those, yes, 1, 2, and 3 are on the ground floor, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are on an upper floor. So again, on 4, 5, 6, and 7, those would not change. And if you look at view 1 and 2, you see that the header of the glazing is much lower than the ceiling. So our design intent was to raise that up for a better view out. That's basically where the intent of the change in the glass comes from. But like Heather said earlier, we are open to revisiting this, and if this is a concern
I think it's-
for the community.
If it's a new construction and you're sort of saying this is a pre-existing windows, so we're not actually touching this, but then we're adding there. I mean, it is sort of a clean slate where you can look at it more holistically than sort of what's been grandfathered in and then what gives you allowances.
What is the height in the first floor in view one? From the floor to ceiling height?
Varies throughout. Do we have this?
So just view one on the dining room.
Floor to ceiling height in view one, I believe is about 10 feet.
And those units are 8 feet high?
Currently is 8 feet.
And you're going to 9.8?
Okay, I think we've heard enough, right?
So, in terms of design adjustment, would the board be open to, like some of you mentioned, maybe narrowing the units, so that we keep the existing glass area the same? Is that something that the board would be open to?
I think you'd have to present that as it, in general, as you can see by the photograph, imagine you were the neighbor. Right, and that's a very large expanse. So you can see it from the water, you can see it from doing a project across the way, you can see it from there, you can see it from the road. It's a very public inner Sagaponic location. I'm just having difficulty trying to understand how accurate these night illuminations are, considering we have a real photograph and they're so different. I don't know if the technology and the rendering is accurate, but it just seems a world away from the reality. So
We had talked about the fact that a lot of it was broadcasting across the pond, but that's still a public concern.
And even though it is construction lights and obviously they're glaring, that's sort of an indication of what can happen if a place changes hands and it's less responsible. And also, if, 9.8 and a 10-foot ceiling, you're giving not much protection for the reflected ceiling either. Which I know has been an issue before, having sort of those clean lines. I think the continuity of the shingles are great. It's a very nice, like clean shingle style aesthetic riff and stuff. But some of the continuity ends versus lights on, lights on. I mean, if I drove by it with the lights on, I would think I was looking at a rectangle, sort of. But
if we could just put on the board, is it possible to have two images out on the same? If you put Ahrb 15, and then you put Melly's image on, I'll just try to express one after. Can you put on the screen?
Yep.
So that's what we're presenting. This is what's happening in general across the board. If you go back to the AR-15, we're being presented this, which seems modest, and then the reality in the photograph is showing a different thing, which is basically a lantern. And now we're adding more glass to this project. So I don't know how we can get accuracy in our renderings, but it's a problem.
What I would suggest is maybe going back and having that conversation. And I will encourage the board to go take a look at it as well and get a better sense of the perspective. And so
Love to have you. I'm so sorry.
lot of it really did have to do with construction, but yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
May I ask just one question in terms of if our conversation with the clients, would it be acceptable if we went and used mostly the existing window dimensions and just said we replace in the same size? Is that something that the board would be amenable to approving?
That question as well. Given that these were, I mean, could they rebuild the exact same fenestration now, or given?
Well, let them have the conversation, I think is the wisest thing, because there has to be sensitivity with an understanding.
Yeah.
And maybe they can realize that.
Yeah, I have full confidence they can.
Okay.
We'd love to have the Fosters come too.
Okay.
Do it together. They're not looking at the lantern.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Doug.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
And then we need to have everything 2 weeks prior to the next meeting so that the board has a chance to review.
Oh, yeah.
Here, what I'd like to do is just get a very general idea of this. If you know the history of this, it's been, something that's taken quite a bit of time, and if you would just give us a general idea of what you're talking about, I'm going to ask that the board members go do another site visit with your new submissions in our hands, so that we can get a better perspective of what you're absolutely moving towards. Okay, thank you.
I'll try and make it brief. My name is Ed Capazzi. I'm an architect for Gaines family company. And we were here in April for a discussion item. And based on that productive conversation, I'm showing you some developments from that. I'm going to just sort of skip to the chase here. We've come up with this notion of clad blocky addition that was built onto the original 1970s Gambrel house. We're cladding with cedar horizontal battlements to lend this streamlined appearance, as well as a sunshade eyebrow. Requirements cantilever and steel outriggers, creating a more horizontal effect over the existing siding. And we, based on your helpful feedback from last time, we've taken that language and also used some similar battens vertically on the first story of the original 70s Gambrel house as well to tie the look together. We're demolishing the roof stair and replacing it with a spiral stair of smaller footprint clad in teak wood slats. We're replacing throughout the upper window sashes of the installed double hung windows with ones without muntins to give it a more modern look. We also hope to revise the railings to tone down their appearance by replacing all the individual wood balusters with cable rail and repainting the rail posts. Repaint the existing trim and anything that is white, including the windows, with Benjamin Moore Carver gray. to more closely match the weathered cedar. And then at the front of the house, to make the entrance more appropriate, we opened it up by taking out the existing overhang and we want to replace it with a slatted entry pergola, thus putting in a larger pivot door and a large glass side light, as well as a built-in bench. And that's kind of the short story.
Thank you. Are there any initial questions as to specifics? And then, as I say, I think we'll all go back out and kind of
Check it
address this.
Yeah. There's some additional renderings at the very end of the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think it'll be a lot easier to understand when you have the house there and you can envision what the plans are. Anything specific at this point?
No, nothing specific. How do you guys feel about this? Are you, how do you, I mean, do you feel this is an improvement than where it was, or?
Well, yes, definitely. I mean, I think, with, of course, continuing to apologize for how this sort of state of events came to be. The idea is to aestheticize the construction and make it, sort of more appropriate to Sagaponic and using the right materials and natural materials. If we fail at that, then it's up to you to tell us that we're falling short. But we're definitely trying to make this look a bit more just more aesthetically appealing.
Yeah. And it's probably our obligation to be a little more cautious on it, given the history of it. So
I understand.
we appreciate that.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure. And we'll be in touch about this station.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Thank you. Yep, take care. Emily, can you get the second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
So he doesn't need to provide anything, you are just going to do a
Just
site
going out
visit.
to a site visit and digest the proposed changes. It's been a while since we saw that site. Since it was. So, Dennis, you're up next. And please keep those.
Oh, yes, sir.
for your list. Okay. And- Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Can we get Nick again? Thank you.
Ready?
Yep, yes.
Dennis Allen, Salem, New York, attorney for the applicants. The property in question is 565 Daniels Lane. It's actually a private road. It intersects with Daniels Lane. It's the street address for the post office. It's known as subcounty tax map 908-10-3-8. Property is located on the east side of the private road. As I said, it intersects with Daniels. It's 1.61 acres, consisting of 194 feet on the street, 174 feet on the rear lot line, which is Potato Road. The sides are 374 feet and 390 feet. That's on the south side. Presently, the property is improved by, I think you all have a copy of the survey, but starting on the west, you have a private road, then you have a stone paving, pervious driveway. There's a two-story dwelling with front porch. It has a slate patio in the back, there's two of them. There's a barbecue area. And an area with pool equipment and a set of stairs going to the second story deck. Beyond that, you have the swimming pool, pool house, a spa, and porch. Okay.
We're good on that.
And of course, then there's a tennis court, and most of the land is cleared. There's lawn. There is heavy vegetation on both the north and south boundaries, as well as on the street, the private road. There's a mature hedge of the 10 to 12 foot tall. I put all my exhibits in one package to you. It would be easy to go through them rather than waste time paying one individual at a time. So there are 10 tax maps that comprise the village of Sagapon, 1 through 10. We happen to be on number 10. And when you get to number 10, you'll see that I've color coded all these tax maps. So on number 10, the subject property is highlighted in red. The all the flag lots that I can find on throughout the whole village, because those are the ones that mostly have these gates. I highlighted those for your review. So the subject premise is located on the eastern side of the village. So I concentrated on what was happening, what's the characteristics of that neighborhood. I stayed on the east side, although I did go to the west side and looked, but I didn't think you would be interested in the gates on the west side if we're sitting on the east side and you want to know the character of our neighborhood. So where this lot is, it's fairly rural from my sense.
Right.
Coming from Sag Harbor, where the houses are one on top of the other, or say Noyak, this is a very rural area. The street, this private road, has approximately 8 houses, or what could be 8 houses on it. It's very narrow, although it meets the code, and it's heavily vegetated on both sides. So it's when you're driving down it, your visibility is a little restricted. Not a lot, but it's restricted. You got to be careful. And I noticed that at least on 3 occasions while I was driving around, I was unable to pass another vehicle on the road. Either one of us pulled over to the side so the other could pass. Although the roads are, this road, the private road is in fact a legal road. So if you go to, there are a lot of gates in the village of village of Sagaponic that do not have permits. I'm assuming that they're all pre-existing non-conforming. Or they were built prior to the village, either prior to the village or prior to the time the village had a gate code. One of the other. So I've given you Exhibit B, which is a list of all the residential permits that have been issued recently. And I had asked Rhodey if she could provide anything for the last 15 years. Okay, so she gave me two sets of permits. One is the agricultural, which doesn't apply in this case, and the other is the residential. So you have the permit, you have the tax map, and on the tax map, I've indicated where those permits are. However, driving around the village in the immediate area of this property, I did notice that there were many other gates. And I gave you a chart that has the list that I found, and the ones that I could identify by a house number. So, and the gates, of course, are of all different makes and combinations. Some you can see have been there for maybe 30 or 50 years. Others are brand new. And the brand new ones usually have a mechanism where you have to pull in and you punch a number in and then you go in. The Siegels are proposing to build code compliant gates. There's a photocopy of, a photograph of what they're proposing. It's with the original submission. The house is surrounded by a wire fence plus the gates. That would give the security that they're looking for. So one of your criteria for issuing a gate permit is necessity. And we have a couple of things that we've submitted on that. First, they've got young children. They're 4, 8, and 10. They play ball in the front, including soccer. It's easy for them to kick the ball out into the street and then go running out foolishly, trying to get the ball, not looking for vehicles that are passing by. Anytime, any adult driver knows that if you see a ball on the road, there's going to be a kid right after it. So you got to be careful. But children don't recognize that. The other thing is the security. One of the serious problems we have in this country right now is unsolicited vendors coming to the door and committing a crime. Either they burglarize the house or they, unfortunately, someone attack the owner. If you have gates, is a security system. They would have to announce who they are, and you have a choice to let them in or not. And also, when the code was being reviewed by the trustees, the Siegels did write a letter to the village. I attached a copy of it as one of the exhibits. I think it's Exhibit E. And basically, their concern was the safety of their children and having unsolicited people coming onto their property. There's a picture in there of someone walking their dog on their driveway. Why the person chose to come in is beyond me, but it's things like that you want to try to avoid. Like many of the residents of Sagaponic, the Siegels are summertime people and weekenders. And during the week, the house is vacant. And all they have is a security factor. So all they can do is memorialize what's happened on their property. But they can't prevent someone from coming onto the property. And that's basically it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Done a lot of homework.
Any questions?
Can we see the site plan on the screen?
The surveys.
Yeah.
Just an internal question for us, or maybe Mr. Downs, I don't know if you looked into it. Does the historic district extend? I see where almost 300 feet south of Daniels Lane.
It does
Extend this far
It
down.
does not extend
Okay.
this far down. I spoke to John, what was the address you had of a contributing?
It was 544.
44, which is,
It's a house that if you come up that common driveway would be on the other side of the road. It is a house that's deemed historic because it's been there since 1860. That's the closest thing to historic that would be anything for this.
Understood.
It's not in the
the
historic.
date of the house was, I'm sorry,
1860.
1860? Which house is it?
Um,
Do you recall?
I'll get you the address right here.
But if that's only a contributing structure of the common district, I see no bar on that end.
There is one house at the very end of the street on the left-hand side that does have gates.
Private.
Excuse me,
You're saying this street? meaning
on the private
driveway?
road, on the private road.
Yeah.
The road that Seagulls live on.
And what might I ask is the distance to the public road from this house?
It's 27.9.
I had that.
Or do you mean to Daniels Lane?
287. Before you get to the property, 300 feet.
It's 287 feet from Daniels.
Mhm.
I'm assuming there's gonna be one more house built in that section. On that 287 foot. I don't think it's.
Don't hope so hard.
Well, you know,
The goal is
That's
to
the-
try and maintain some farmland.
that's the
someplace.
trend. Well, if you look at that tax map, you see there's a lot of farmland around this property.
Yeah.
That's why I said it's so rural.
Yeah.
In comparison to what I'm used to.
If, in this totally hypothetical situation, but if we were able to see a way to get one gate, would they be willing to have a single lane driveway?
I think they were proposing two so that they would not have to build a parking area. Which would take up more land.
Yeah. Or cake and eating it too, but I understand.
And- I'm sorry, 560. Just trying to, do you have any, you don't have a Google Earth or anything like that on this? Because I was thinking I sent you one the last time we were trying.
What about this?
That doesn't give me the perspective or the distance to the
neighbors,
street,
okay.
yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Do you have any other questions? At the moment, I'm just trying to get a sense of this. Your perspective.
It is quite far off, but we're always reluctant to give one gate, now we're given two the same time.
Right.
It seems sometimes people that use the safety and all these things, they also want the ease of two means of egress, which would add sufficient safety also.
What is the?
But it's not exactly, it's not in the middle of historic district or anything.
I think what it is they enter on the south gate and exit on the north gate.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the distance between the two proposed gates,
Um,
between the driveway cuts? if you will?
I'd say about 140 feet.
Evelyn, anything else?
I would like to not see it be a double gated driveway
I just think.
or a
it's-
gate at all.
I just think of 300 feet from the smaller road in general. Where there's no destination, it's all private.
Yeah.
just don't see it. The fact that they want 2 gates and 2 curb cuts. Very much.
The curb cuts were over there, just like the driveway is in.
No, I understand that. Yeah. And you're currently proposing the closer gate would be 26 feet off the edge of the road? Is that correct?
I can have a surveyor plot that.
Well, it's on the survey, but I'm just asking if this is accurate to what you're proposing right now. This is dated 2020, and I'm not sure that this is a current, well, this is stamped May 5th. Yeah.
Well, the last survey that was done was January 23.
Okay. Right. And the
Last
gates
revised
were
at the bottom
added,
right.
the gates were placed on the survey April 3rd. Okay. So, what is your sense? You want to put it up for a straw vote?
My sense is sort of to save our firepower for more egregious ones that really affect the community greater. We have a precedent that we've been bent over backward for 2 gates for 1 person. Maybe we could really enforce it when it happens on.
If you do this, it will be leverage to do it again.
Right. I feel like it's pretty, I mean, kids should be safe. It's not a,
No.
you know,
The kids should
I don't
be
really see a
probably in the
reason for
backyard too, but
It's private, it's a large lot.
It's off of this.
The rear yard of this property is 398 feet by 174 feet. It's on a private road, 300 feet away from, not that busy of a road. I just don't think it-
I agree.
And concealment from public view is one of the elements that we can look into.
It's a very large yard to play in.
And gatekeep service people from speeding out of it too.
So I think we should move on.
okay, so straw vote at this point would be a denial, is that correct? Yes?
Yes.
Straw vote.
Would be a
No.
denial,
Okay.
it would lose at this point, okay.
Very good research.
So, John, what do you suggest to ask them to, is there any flexibility in your mind as far as anything else that they could come up with?
It would help if it was 1 curb cut, but I'm not sure.
There for soccer too.
Hmm?
There for soccer also.
Okay. The board would recommend that perhaps they could come up with a way to do 1 cut and rearrange their parking perhaps in the front yard.
Remember, parking in the required front yard is against the zoning code. They would need a variance to create a parking field in the required front yard.
Cool. And they have to,
And
they have to
Well,
create
you have
parking.
you have your parking area.
They have to do it in the rear or side.
When you have a turnaround, but you can't have a parking. field
Yeah,
in the
right.
front yard without a variance.
There's plenty of room inside.
Right, but the existing parking pull-in area getting to the garage is already there, correct?
Yes, it is.
But we're just suggesting that maybe the circular portion could be eliminated,
Right.
bringing you down to 1 gate and an area to turn around.
Show me a picture.
Right, okay, so I think that's where we're at.
Well, considering looks like there's a parking area right in front of the garage, so to speak.
Correct, yeah,
We would eliminate the south gate.
yes,
Is that it? Consensus?
yeah. Okay,
I'll be back.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn, and again, high praise on your research. That was excellent.
Yeah.
That's been very useful for us. Motion to adjourn, Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. We have one other thing to look at.
You want me to? Okay.
Because that will come.
I don't know when to follow this.
Incorporate that into the equation.
This whole thing, yeah.
So,
And this, yeah.
Thank you. This property should be somewhat familiar with 583. We granted a demo on this last year, is that correct? And it was a kind of falling apart situation. If you could just sort of give us a sense of where this layout is, it looks a little bit, quite a bit different than what I recall from the setting, but maybe the setting has changed a little bit. Having done the site visit.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Tom Martin. I'm a landscape architect representing Thomas and Paul Perry, 583 Hedges Lane. What we are proposing is a single entry gate at the main corner of the house. Our original concept was to the west border of the property is a flag lot, a shared driveway. We originally had a concept of putting the gates along the flag lot. In consultation and further design, we decided to shift the gates further off Hedges Lane and have the direct sight of any passing cars or any neighboring properties. The gate itself is a yellow cedar gate, 16.5 feet wide, which allows for ample emergency access to the property. It's operated by a call box at the inner portion of the property. As part of the design concept, as you enter the property, the driveway will widen, and we will create a grass creek area for cars that accidentally enter the property, for possibility that they can perform a 3-point turn and exit the property without backing out onto the flag lot. The neighbors to the east, we have a 50-foot drainage easement and then a 10-foot mature privet hedge that totally screens our neighbor from any views inward. There's a privet hedge along Hedges Lane as well that provides screening for the property. Because the house is located closer towards Hedges Lane, the homeowners requested the gate for security and privacy. They have 3 younger children. They wanted to avoid any conflicts with cars entering the driveway off the hedges.
And what is the distance from this cut to Hedges?
64 feet to the property line.
Just for our internally, is this outside of the historic district? I see it's technically on Hedges Lane. Is it off of Flag Lot? I'm just trying to position.
Well, you can see it there.
I see.
How close it is to the street. Yeah.
The main entrance will be off of the shared drive. Yes.
Initially, I sort of worry that in addition to having a gate within line of sight, you've almost made with this turnout, which is logically, you've almost made a de facto parking court in an area that would not otherwise be allowed. My kids would turn the little court into a basketball court, and I'd be parking in this driveway until I was kicked off the village. But that could be sort of a concern that this would be a prime parking area, corralling trade people, not parking there and stuff.
Yeah, initially, we intended the gate to be on the western border,
Just directly through,
but we had a conflict with the distance.
quite too tight, yeah. Yeah.
So to clarify, this is outside of historic districts?
I believe so.
Yes, it is.
It is good.
And your setting is, again, can you just? You can read the rest of it. So it's visually not on the side road, correct? And where is the call box? Is that?
A little to the top of the screen.
Would you like the board to say?
Yeah, that would be good. And currently it's pretty well planted along the edge of the road, is that clear?
Yes. We plan to add additional interior plant material. Just directly opposite is the.
That's the current setting.
And is there a change in materials from the driveway through the gate? Are those lines? Is there?
No, it'll be the same indigenous crushed material.
And you're saying this area has existing old growth trees?
Yeah, this is the house. You're pulling in the gate would be about here. Okay, so it's not all, it's probably not going to be visible from the street at all. You have plantings suggested for on the edges of the gate, is that right?
We do, yeah.
In this particular setting, provided that the vegetation that's proposed is actually followed through, I'm less hesitant to grant it. On the side, you're aware that you need to have automatics open for power outages, and what is that tone that the fire department uses to open?
See, there we go, it's more of like a Knox box. I actually sell key pads that have a Knox key built right into it.
But that has come up as a major problem for EMS. So just be aware of that.
And is the idea to keep the gates open a lot of the time with the cattle crossing, or is it just a belts and suspenders?
No, I
towards
think
the foliage?
they have 3 young children, so I think it is
Gotcha.
intended to be closed.
Okay. Any other questions?
This is an approved gate aesthetic from last time, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember little bits on top.
Yeah.
Oh, the trim on the top. That's kind of unique to this, yeah.
Yeah.
That feature be something that they could live without.
So with that,
The pinnacles on the top of the frame. Is that something they're married to? Usually we wouldn't have this much extra.
you
feature.
want to flush, yeah.
So that's something. Is that something they would go for? Okay.
Ready?
You wanna put it up for a vote? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make it.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. I'll second it and then we'll go to the vote, okay? So we have a second. Is there a motion? Is there all those in favor? Not in favor, not in favor?
Not in favor.
Okay. What is the pretense on the trim down? Just that it's a gate?
What's that?
Just that it's a gate?
Yes. I don't feel that it's necessary for safety purposes.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Cannibalizes so much property too.
Hmm?
Cannibalizes so much property also, and that's obviously not within my purview, but that's a,
It's a good application. I just don't think we should be approving them unless there's a true safety issue or again, lived on a highway or.
So part of our concern was the hedges being a fairly major thoroughfare and with the side shared flag lot, it almost looks like a lot of people can take that turn and enter right into the driveway. That was our concern of safety.
And for the
I'm on
board,
Saguenay with a 10-foot driveway and every surfboard I own, which is my most valuable possessions, and they've never been taken.
So this is concern about a newborn and 2 younger children and cars entering this property at such a short distance that they can, within seconds, they can be into the main corridor. That's a real concern.
so if the board has a moment, I'm just gonna run through the criteria that we can look into for approval or denial are avoidance of excessive ornamentation, concealment from the public view, functionality without unnecessary design features, limited structural visual mass, use of wood, natural and unpainted, except for light stain or clear finish, visual compatibility with surrounding properties, harmonious relationship with the neighborhood, mitigative impact upon increasing setbacks, placement at greatest reasonable setback from the street, and necessity or absence thereof of the gates and gate posts for security purposes. So those are our guiding standards. So discussion of safety is allowed if we would like to go down that route.
We have 2 approvals, two negatives. So that's it. Nothing more.
Is there anything that we didn't follow within the guidelines that you think is
I don't think so.
unacceptable?
Well, the board, it's up to the board's broad discretion if they have thoughts or if they believe that it's not necessary for security, if it's not harmonious with the neighborhood, visual compatibility, the design or excessive ornamentation, the board has broad discretion on that.
Just for discussion's sake, do you have a play yard that's actually fenced so the kids aren't out where the parking court is?
Well, I think it's more that the proximity to the front door, that if they get out, if they're out to the front door.
Hey, Tom, this is Carrie, he's here if you'd like to hear.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, the reason why is obviously Hedges is such a busy road and we have such small children and we all know what happened and we're very concerned about the children running out. And we specifically, obviously, would never, we love Sagaponic, we love that everyone can roam in and out, but and we don't want it to, we love what you guys do, we don't want it to be different, which is why we never ask for it to be on hedges. It's just so that they don't run out, because if they, people are, I love that you have the speed bumps in, but people are fun.
You're there, I mean, when you, if you check your phone, yeah, they just closed down on Ocean Road for that reason.
Yeah, so I mean, I love that you guys are making it more safe, but I mean, people are still living through there. And so, the kids, when they ride their bikes down, and the thing is, so it's purely for safety, it's just, no one can see it, we understand your rules, we put it all the way back, it's just so that the kids don't.
I mean, not trying to be
Yeah.
like Solomon-like at all, but the fact that someone was trying to get 2 gates in when 1 would have sufficed, and here you are actually sacrificing your land to make this work shows a distinct intention, so.
One alternative, because we are not a full board today, is to come back and put it before the full board, as opposed to have a turn down, which is where we're at the moment, because you have to have 3 members that vote in affirmation of the application.
And do you feel that it's safe enough for children right now?
I'm not making a judgment call on that. I'm simply suggesting that with a full board of 5, there's an option that you might get a 3rd vote and get it approved. Okay, so right now it's a draw.
So rather than a turn down, you get an adjournment.
Is there a vote as a motion for an adjournment in this particular case should be heard by a full board?
Is there any other materials you want us to bring?
It's not a question of materials, it's just
Maybe the
having.
children.
The feeling.
Maybe
I can bring
Well,
the
no, I
children.
think, just to clarify,
Well, if they're not
was the
on
question,
right now, for one
were
of
there
them,
any
so.
other
And the other three.
concerns that she could have addressed? I think that's what.
Yeah, I don't think so, I just think it's.
I can show you pictures.
There are too many gates and it's changing the.
We just feel like we.
Texture.
Conscious
You've done
effort
a
in
wonderful
terms of
job.
sealing
I
it.
think so, too. You did a
You
great
can't do this
job.
unless you enter their property.
The other option is to ask to have a site visit so that we get a personal experience to the setting, and maybe we can
We'd love
swing
to.
a vote on that, okay?
I mean,
So those are the 2 options that I can provide to you.
Some lemonade,
to
maybe?
take. Is that right? Lemonade? Come on. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
So who seconded?
Tony did.
You
Tony,
made the motion, but
I'll
who seconded?
second it. All those in favor to adjourn?
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You'll be in this one. And the board will make a site visit.
We'll try and get our people over there so that they have a personal perspective of it. Thank you.
The site visit could really help because the trees
Oh,
are.
yes, no, we are, it's so tall already, and we're actually gonna put more.
Oh, that one?
I just wanna make sure you can't see anyone
Oh.
on edges, you don't want that like.
Oh,
window,
yeah.
so we're also gonna back.
The other thing to keep in mind is every single application is site specific. And so in doing the site visit, perhaps that'll enable us to.
Yeah, we'd love to have, I'd love to be in the house. That's a different story.
All right, thank you for coming. Yeah.
Okay. It is discussion, I'm the architect for Mr. Peter Azoshki and his partner. We are located at 871 Sacramento Main Street, which is a historic house. And it also has a contributing barn on the property. And it also has additional barn structures on the property, including a recently 1980s constructed agricultural structure, which we think was used for housing and storage. So the long and short of my appearance before you is to discuss need for addition onto the farmhouse. But we have issue in terms of excessive structure into these barn buildings on the property. If Pat could, if you could put up on the screen here, you could. Yeah, I'll cut right to the video here, and I'll point out before you go. Farmhouse, proposed addition, existing, what we believe is contributing barn.
Yeah, that was a machine shop.
And back here, that's the 1980s constructed.
That is long older than 1980s.
It is,
That was existing in the 60s.
There was a permit, I looked on the town website, there was some
Right.
work.
Yeah, there was some work done, but that farm worker housing was there when I was looking.
Okay.
So,
There you go. So if you want to hit go, Matty.
just for note, the new construction is not going to be painted white, right?
No.
Okay.
It was. That was not likely to blend in, the same question client asked, just to see like, what is this? And so the intent was to keep this structure so that it's clearly not visible on the road. And also Secretary of State, Department of Interior would like any new construction to contributing to be clearly separated by means of a link, if you will. So we've done that, and also in accordance, kept the scale down. So potential look of this is really behind the roadside. And as you can see, these other buildings back here, this is an 88,000 square foot parcel, and they eat up quite a bit of real estate here. So I've done this before with the zoning board, is to actually seek approval for the GFA by means of a variance, which would allow the FAR to go towards the house. I did this with the Domikowski farm, which is on Narrow Lane East. So the question is, we know that the center barn is the contributor according to the register.
Age, yeah.
Yeah, this I call the art barn. This is a squash ball court barn. And this is the agricultural housing structure, which may have had a building permit because it has a kitchen, which they have taken out, and has bathrooms. So again, in looking at this from a preservation standpoint, I don't believe that, unless you recollect differently, Tom, that this entire barn is original. It seems to me that it may have been an L shape, I don't know, but we were thinking about using it as a garage. So we can keep it or a portion of it, depending on how you all feel. But they have need for 6 bedrooms minimum. They have grown children, not quite adult, fully grown, but the intent is to keep this building, as you see, nice and preserved the view from Main Street. And this addition behind the building, very subtle, gives them living space that they need. We have a water table issue on the property. We go down like 7 feet in hit water. It's like not 8 foot. So I can't do the tunnel from farmhouse to the barn house. So we have to do the addition. And the question is, would the board want to possibly support preservation of the other buildings where I could go to the zoning board and not be penalized for this additional accessory structure on the property?
The art studio seems to me that that might have been added. Was there a building permit on that change?
It was on an updated CO as a structure, not necessarily an art studio, but it has been there historically, yes.
Yeah. I have a aerial map from town of Southampton, 1930s, and started to take photographs, and there was a lot line modification here. This is all part of the, is it the Hopping? Topping farm. And these buildings, I believe that is a contributing. This one has a squash ball court inside.
That was potato storage.
Yeah. And so in terms of historic, we know that the house is historic. And we know that one of these is contributing. So
The house actually burned in 07, I think, and was rebuilt. So that's not a really, really old structure. The main house burned around 1907.
okay.
But your general question is that, could you repeat that about the FAR and GFA?
Now, the GFA of each, the yellow indicates
Right.
the accessory. So it's putting us in a position where I would have to go for a ZBA request so that we could make addition to the farmhouse. Had these buildings not existed,
Right.
clean application, because this property nets by code a total of it's 7,200 for the house plus 1,089 of accessory. So I could get the aggregate up to 8352. And similar to the Domkowski property, we wanted to keep these buildings because they help contribute to the character of Sagaponic. And that would be something where we'd like to come to the board to do an appropriate addition to the house. If you could go one slide up, Abby, I guess page number 2 is talk to the zoning board about these buildings here and see if we can negotiate a potential 8,300 square
So
feet.
you're asking for our approval, essentially.
Endorsement.
No, because I'm gonna come back as an application, so want to see if I can get the mood of the board to say, well, this would make sense to seek an addition to the house. Because the tunnel concept, we thought about picking this house up, moving it back, connecting to the barn, making the barn part of the house, but it doesn't, it's not cohesive for a family situation. And it's also, if this is truly a contributing barn, you don't want to start cutting big glass doors into it, but keep it like it is. So,
The skylights were not original.
and, but I do, to the board's edit for your edification, all of this is 1900s-ish, some maybe even a little bit way back. But we're being mindful, it comes to the spirit of preservation.
Seems right.
And that's the goal
Mhm.
for this. So as a discussion, I would like to come back to you as a formal application, but we have to go to the zoning board first. I can't run this application prior to zoning board commentary. So if, I don't expect a reaction from the board. However, if you thought that this approach seems reasonable, I
It
would
seems reasonable.
pursue it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. That would be great.
Any further questions at this point? I know it's an introduction, but I think it makes sense.
Agreed.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Long day for you all. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Yeah.
And also for taking an interest in that property. It's been there for a long time.
welcome to the neighborhood.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're very excited. We both live here full time, so it's
Lovely.
very happy.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
okay.
Committee of two.
I'm done.
Committee of two? Yeah, we need a committee of two person. Should we look on that? Anybody here? No, sure. Tony will do that. And any other, I intend to, let's close the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? No?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Recording.